Hello, I'm Pastor Hilly. Though it's summer and Faith Lutheran Church's Adult Forum series is on hiatus, with so much of our lives being pushed into the online arena due to COVID-19, I have both heard of and been caught up in email scamming. Understanding the realities at hand, this is a special mini episode of Adult Forum titled Email Security and Staying Safe During COVID-19. But before we get to our special guest this week, a brief reminder that during this time of social distancing, there is wonderful ministry coming out of the community that we call Faith Lutheran Church in Whitehall, Ohio. Ministry that includes this very podcast. If you would like to support the ministry of faith financially, please find the link labeled Giving in the description below. And now, on to our episode. Joining me today is my friend Alan Webb, who works in IT and email and online security and so many other things that are out of my arena and I cannot explain. And so, Alan, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it, my friend.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, how's this socially distant life treating you for the past couple months?
I would probably venture to say life in general is kind of weird right now. So it's I don't know. There were a couple of months where things were touch and go there.
Oh, absolutely. The thing I always say to people is life in 2020 really feels like the Wild West.
A little bit. Yeah. There's just like a general uncertainty and like malaise, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on. I think things are getting better. I hope they're getting better.
I agree with you, man. I hope. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. Yep. So
both of them.
you and I have had a number of conversations. So you work in IT, internet security, that sort of thing.
Yeah. My background is in network administration. I've been in Columbus and IT for about 12 years now. I graduated at DeVry. I've had various jobs in the financial industry, healthcare, retail, general retail support from the IT side. So a little bit all over the place.
Nice. And it was talking about your history, especially in that industry and the world that we live in now, that I think I said to you in passing, and here's a quick plug, hanging out with our good friends down at Two Tones there in Whitehall, great guys down there.
For sure.
But I made the offhand comment to you that I feel like there's a lot more scam or hack emails since this whole COVID-19 thing kicked off. And you said that you were kind of seeing the same thing from your end. So can you say a little bit more about that?
I think everybody's kind of been seeing it. I was just going through our spam filter at work today. And in the last couple of weeks alone, we've seen a doubling in scam and malware and phishing emails. And there are other publications that have seen that too. A lot of antivirus companies have put out white papers talking about it, the huge uptick in scams, especially through email. So it's an ongoing thing.
And so this is, I mean, the thing about the internet being the internet, this isn't even nationwide. I'm sure this is just worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Working from home, more people are dependent on email and internet access, and thus there's more information and more of that kind of thing happens, right?
Right. It's like I said, with that uncertainty that's kind of going around, there's people out there, bad actors that are more than willing to take advantage of that.
Right. And do you think that they're more willing? They're more willing to take advantage of it because they're, for lack of a better phrase, and I feel kind of dirty saying this, they're trying to make a living too, even through nefarious means.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot more people in the online arena than ever before.
Absolutely.
I mean,
the number grows every day.
Yeah, I know a number of people who bought their first computer within the last 4 months.
Yep.
and so suddenly,
More people with tablets wanting to call their or Skype or FaceTime with their grandkids or their kids, because they're stuck at home. What else? You got to stay in touch.
exactly. My parents, my mom figured out how to FaceTime because I have a nephew, and she hasn't seen her nephew in a couple months, and so she's like, "Let me figure out how to get on this." But then she was telling me the other day, like now more people are calling me, and they're more like robocalls.
Yeah,
And it's predatory, right? It's entirely predatory.
almost always. Yeah,
Yeah.
with those phone calls, especially.
So one thing that I feel like it would be helpful for us to clarify early on in our conversation is, could you give me a simple definition between, let's say, an email scam and a hacked email?
Um, well, one can happen without the other. You can get scam emails without having your email been hacked per
Mhm.
se. Hacking of email would be somebody got your login information for your personal email. Um, and you would normally be able to tell that, at least to some degree, by having a lot of excess strange emails in your inbox, um, getting notifications from your email provider, like that your password has been changed or um, your security questions have been reset. Um, and then also, if your email gets hacked, oftentimes what they're looking for is credentials to other accounts that you have that are linked to your email.
Mhm.
So you may see other accounts being changed as well. And that's a good indicator that your email has been hacked. Now, scam emails are, everybody gets them,
Right.
whether your email's been compromised or not. Um, and they come in a bunch of different forms. There's different classifications for them. Depends on what they're looking for, what they're asking for. Um, so yeah, you can get scam emails without having been hacked. Is mostly the difference.
I think that that's a really important clarification to make, right?
Yeah,
Just because you fall victim to a scam doesn't necessarily mean that your email's been hacked.
right.
And if we use those words as synonyms, that can be really confusing, especially when we try to figure out the next steps of,
How
well,
to handle it. Yeah.
right, right. How do we handle it? So let's talk about scam emails for a second. The really simple question that I know has a really complex answer, or an answer that could take 4 hours in and of itself.
Yeah.
What does someone need to generate like a scam email?
That's probably what makes well, junk mail and spam email and scam emails so like prevalent that everybody gets them and almost on a daily basis is that it's super cheap and easy to create scam emails. They're very low effort. All you need is like a $300 laptop and a $20 DSL connection, and you can start pumping out emails,
Mhm.
trying to get either information or money or people's credentials, like their logins for various things. So it's really low effort. Um, and it kind of shows if you really pay attention to the emails. Um, they're generally not super well thought out. Um, so that can be kind of like an indicator how low effort they are. Um,
So
and people can also send emails that look like they came from you. That's another thing that's kind of strange. Uh, Emails are everywhere. You can get a list of email addresses. You can go online and buy a list of email addresses. Somebody's gone out and say, hey, this is a known email address. And then you can start spamming people. Um, so it really doesn't, there's no like regulations to stop people from sending emails as if they're yours. It gets out into the weeds, but yeah.
you take an organization like a church, like those of us at Faith in Whitehall, right? And
Mhm.
um, I know that a number of people in our leadership council were getting emails that said they were from me, but
Yeah.
asking ridiculous things, right? And in my mind, I looked at our website and I realized that on one of the pages we had my name and email, and then the president, the vice president, and certain members of staff. And I just I thought about it and I realized that everyone who was getting scammed was on that list of people.
Yeah.
You know, so because whoever it was, very much like you're saying, bought a cheap laptop or whatever the case was, and somehow they sent an email that had my name on the masthead. But like one thing I realized was that if you click the little drop down menu, the return address was always something very generic.
Yeah.
You know, and as people would forward them to me directly and say, hey, did you send me this? Like what you're saying, that like the scammer would write my full name and not write Pastor Hilly, which is what I always write, or PDH, right?
Yeah.
Or the grammar was bad, which people who know me are like, no, 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 I'm going to make sure my commas are in the right places, right? So what are some of if you get a weird email, like what are kind of the telltale signs that you can look at and be like, all right, something here feels fishy? Like you've said grammar, right? Like if it's written
Yeah.
report.
There's some generic things like that. Most of them are very poorly written. And they'll use terminology like sometimes you'll get like, this is a notice from your financial institution that we need your password and username reset right now. Tell us what those are. And it's like, banks don't do that. They will, any legitimate institution will not ask for your credentials for anything, especially over email. And then there's links are also, if there's strange links that point to a website that very obviously has nothing to do with what the email's about.
Right.
So if somebody's looking for, I don't know, I think in your case you said there was donations in the way of like gift cards or something.
Yep, non-trade cards.
And there's a link in there pointing you out to, I don't know, eBay or something like that. That has nothing to do with what they're asking for. So that can be kind of a tell. Some emails will have attachments. Attachments are a big no-no. That's usually a red flag is what they call them. Half the battle with picking these things out is looking for red flags. Just like you would if you were interacting with a person. You're looking for things that stand out that don't quite strike you right. It's like, okay, this says it comes from Pastor Dan, but then the return address is somebody completely different. That's a red flag. Having an attachment when you're asking for information, that's generally not a good sign. Urgency, this has to be done right now. That is a big red flag. There is almost nothing that you, if somebody was dying, they would not be sending you an email. That seems kind of ridiculous.
That's a great point.
So that's something to keep an eye out for too. And that's kind of scamming 101, even if it's not emails, if it's on the phone, if it's at your front door, if it's on the street. If they're really pushing the urgency, it's a red flag.
Yeah.
Even things like, I know a lot of older people have gotten, hey, this is your grandson. I'm in jail. I need you to bail me out. Send me gift cards. And it's like at 2 a.m, you get this phone call, and it's like you're half asleep, and oh, he's in jail. I need to do this right away. It's a strange situation, but they try and catch you when you're off guard, and try to push the urgency and ask you for something that is usually monetary. But it can also be your login credentials for something, or just personal information, which you really shouldn't give out over an email. Even to legitimate places, don't send your account numbers, your login information, any of that via email. Always call a known good phone number, or in person if you can. Visit the person who's supposedly is requesting this information. If it says your bank needs this, go to the bank,
Yeah.
or look up their phone number and call them directly. That's another thing. Don't use the information that is contained in the email to contact somebody,
Right.
because it'll oftentimes be false information, or like your return email address you said earlier, that's not legitimate. It'll be a phone number for somebody else entirely, not your bank.
Yeah.
So those are kind of things to keep an eye out for. If the contact information doesn't match what you're used to, that's another red flag.
Right.
So it can go on and on. There's all sorts of little things when you get into the nitty gritty that you figure out, so that's not right.
We our secretary at the church, and we can talk about bots in a second, but what I assume was a bot, again, saw my name, saw the church office emailed the church office and said I needed cash gift cards, yada yada yada. And she randomly called me, and it was after office hours. It's probably 7 p.m. And she sounded kind of frantic, and she goes, "I don't understand why you're being so aggressive."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I go, I'm sorry, like, I don't know why you're calling me. Let's figure this out. And she goes, "I got your gift cards. I'm getting ready to send them to you." But it's exactly what you're talking about. It was an email after hours. It was written in that urgent sense. Whoever was on the other side of that return address kept responding to whatever she was saying.
Yeah.
And finally, she called me directly as the person who was, in the namesake, if you will. And then we were able to have that conversation. And it's so imperative that, if your friend or your pastor or your bank says it needs this really weird thing, don't respond to the issue, but like call that person directly.
Yeah.
Because that will solve all of the issues.
If you're feeling pressured and uncomfortable, there's no reason you can't walk away from the situation.
Agreed.
And deal with it later, or deal with it the next day and contact whoever is involved directly.
Yeah. Because none of these issues are actually, life or death,
Right.
I mean, you brought up the scam, which I've seen before, which is like, hey, your grandson is in jail. And I'm like, if your grandson's in jail, he doesn't have your phone and he's not emailing you at 1 a.m.
Right.
There's a logical inconsistency or incongruity there. And like, but again, very much to your point, they try to catch you at this off hour where, again, if your grandson is in jail, he doesn't need gift cards because he's not going to Bed Bath & Beyond jail.
Right.
But you're a question at 2 a.m. You're like,
right.
Need something. Like, what do I have to do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we look at the world, especially the online world, is any kind of business, nonprofit, euchre group, church, where multiple people's names and email addresses listed in a public forum, are they just ripe for being scammed?
They are. When you go through like auditing at a business level, that's one of the things they'll usually look at is what information do you have publicly available. And they will look for names, email addresses. There's even who your website is registered to, whether you realize it or not, oftentimes has an email address and a name associated with it. And some of that, sometimes your website provider can kind of hide that from people, which is great. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was the bots. There's actually people that are sophisticated enough with technology that they will write programs and have computers go and check websites for this information and just make a database of it. So it never sleeps, 24/7. Oh, this website, it's apparently a business, and these are the names and the email addresses we were able to find associated with it. And it just creates this giant database, and they're like, all right, start spamming.
Because then you pick the VP and you email everybody under the VP, and you're like, or you pastor and you email everybody else in the church, and you're like, the pastor needs something. The VP
right.
Need something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The CEO needs something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It happens it happens to every organization, honestly. And I'm currently in the financial sector, and we get trainings all the time, and it's happened before where uh, somebody will get a phone call or email uh, like shortly after the business is closed for the day, and it's like, this is the president or CEO. I need you to wire $100,000 to this account immediately. um, and it's people have done it before, and that's part of the training is yeah, don't ever take anything at face value, and don't give in to urgency, and call the person who's supposedly involved directly, or meet them face to face if you can. um, so it happens to everybody: churches, banks, um, grocery stores, even like big companies like Target. I'm sure everybody heard about the Target breach that happened not that long ago, where they skimmed a bunch of cards off of their point of sale system. Yeah, and everybody got new cards, is what came out of that. But uh, it happens to everybody, big and small.
So with that being said, like, what can the average Joe do? Like, what can the everyday person do to just kind of like safeguard themselves and protect themselves in this wild west that we're living in?
Picking up on those red flags that we mentioned earlier is a great one. Um, the knowing what to do if you think you've been a victim. Some worst case, you've had some monetary loss, which the reason they look for gift cards is because they can't be traced. So there's very little chance of you getting the gift cards back. Sometimes you can, file claims with your bank to get reimbursed. Um, Filing a police report is a great idea. Sometimes these are rings of people that are doing this. It's not just one person. And sometimes the police and or FBI can get involved and track the people down.
Oh,
Um, so there's that. If your credentials get stolen, your login information, like we were talking about hacked email,
yep.
um, changing your password and or your login information immediately is the best course of action. Um, and that goes for even more than just email. Any account you may have, um, if you feel like it's been compromised, you can usually go in and change your password yourself. And
Mhm.
if you can't do it, you can call somebody and they can do it for you.
Yeah.
Um, so it, that can be helpful. Um, in the realm of email, the general recommendation that I've always made is keep at least 3 email accounts. You've
Hmm.
got one for work, one that you keep all your important like financial stuff in, and your day-to-day accounts, and then one for spam, which is things you don't necessarily use every day, but you still have to have an email address for some reason.
Yeah.
If you want to register for some random thing online, a giveaway, or uh, the games you play on Facebook or something like that, or your social media accounts. It's usually a good idea for those to go to the spam account. Um, so keeping things separated can help a lot too, because then that gives you that mental place where you can say, well, this account is very likely to get a lot of junk, so I need to be extra cautious with this account. And then if that one gets compromised, then you still have your main account, that where all your good stuff goes to, good stuff. Um, and you can also use them as backups for each other.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll give you what they call two-factor authentication, which is you can register a phone number or an extra email address, to
Mhm.
where if you sign in from strange place, it's like you obviously live in Columbus, Ohio, but you just signed in from China. We're going to verify that by sending you an email, not to this email, but your other email address, to have you verify that this is you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so there's that. Two-factor authentication is big. Um, they'll also sometimes send you a text message with a code um, when you sign in from someplace strange or just randomly. Um, So that can be really helpful.
Nice.
The Yeah, the not clicking on links is a big one.
Yeah.
The avoiding attachments in emails is a big one. Uh, but those are really the basics. And it never hurts to also have somebody to kind of bounce things off of,
Mhm.
to just kind of have a sanity check.
Yeah.
Uh, so don't be afraid to say something to somebody and be like, hey, this seems a little strange. What do you think about this?
Right.
Um,
Especially when the email may be coming from a person you supposedly know.
right.
Yeah, if you get one from your cousin or your friend or whatever, and you're like, but again, it's like what we're saying, right? You don't respond into that email. You get a weirdo email, text them, call them, and say, hey, did you actually send this? Because otherwise you can be feeding into that system.
Right. It's looking for like out of character like behavior too.
Yeah.
Like you said, I can't imagine you really email people asking for things regularly, especially off hours.
Yeah.
Um, so that can be a thing to look out for too. It's like this doesn't sound like Pastor Dan,
Yeah.
and so that's another red flag.
Nice.
Um, but
Well,
that's really the basics. And changing your passwords regularly, that helps a lot too.
right.
So a lot of places won't make you change your password, but at least like every 60 to 90 days is a good idea. If you can do it once a year, that's great.
Right.
Um, so that can help a lot, because sometimes passwords get leaked and you may never know about it. So it's just good practice to change them every once in a while.
Right. Huh. Well, hey man, Alan, I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate you being part of this mini episode of Adult Forum. Thank you so much. You've said so much useful stuff that I'm really excited for other people to hear. You're a good friend, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you for being part of it. And yeah, hopefully, we'll all make it through this new frontier together, and hopefully, we can minimize this on all fronts for everybody, right? Like that's the goal.
Yeah. I mentioned the uncertainty earlier. One thing I am certain of is we'll get through it.
That's the truth, man. Well, hey, bud, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye.